I don't think a lot of white churches speak up for a couple reasons. One, I think, is ignorance, and the other, I think, is arrogance. And not ignorance in the definition of stupidity, but ignorance in that I just don't know that this is going on. It's not something that affects me every day. It hasn't affected me for generations. So if you're telling me about this invisible problem, pretty much, that in your world is an everyday reality, but to me it's literally invisible. So I'm kind of like, what are you talking about? Why are you talking about this? Why can't we say all lives matter? Why do we just have to say Black lives matter? So I think there's an ignorance, but I also think there's an arrogance in that I am fully aware of this problem and I don't care. I don't care enough to be vocal. I don't care enough to stand with you. I don't care enough to sacrifice maybe reputation or dollars or membership or brands or anything. I don't care enough. It's kind of like I am arrogant enough to know about this problem and simultaneously not do anything about it. Now, coupled with both ignorance and arrogance, there are some white churches that are extremely vocal. Man, I have brothers in Canton, Ohio, Noah Nickel and Jordan Smucker that are like, yo, Swoope, we want to talk about this. We want to talk about it with our church. We want to talk about it with our young people. We want to start these conversations that lead to relationships, that lead to X, Y, and Z, da, 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 da. So I don't think all white churches, that's not what I'm saying, are silent. But those that are, I would attribute it to either ignorance or arrogance. I'll just give one scenario, and it's a microcosm of everything else. My wife and I, we're in Chicago right now for Legacy, and a white guy was driving a SUV and sped through a red light, and then we watched him go because he almost hit us, and then he went through a stop sign as well. And my wife said, man, I wonder what it's like to be able to do that and not have to worry about being murdered for it. So, A, he broke the law, but B, he's not concerned about if I get pulled over, something's going to happen. So the Alton Sterlings, the Philando Castiles and things like that, where the cops get involved with an African American for either, maybe you doing what you weren't supposed to be doing, or you were just selling CDs, or just, I had a gun permit, I'm showing you, I'm telling you, and things like that. There's the consistent threat of dying. Not jail time, not a speeding ticket, not a fine. There's the consistent threat of dying, and this has been happening for generation upon generation upon generation. And white people don't have to worry about that for the most part because they're the majority culture. So it's a consistent, like, okay, I got to be on my P's and Q's, I have to be compliant and things like that, that white people don't have to necessarily think about or worry about. And I wouldn't fault them to an extent. It's just something they don't have to worry about, and that African Americans and minorities at large do. And that's just kind of a microcosm of, we have to think through everything. I had a friend of mine whose mother is moving, and she said, all right, we got to get everything out, and then we're going to stage the house. Not unheard of. People stage the house when they want to sell it. She said, oh shoot, I need to take my pictures down. All of my like African pro-black pictures, or pictures of Obama, or pictures of my family, or things like that. Because if they find out that I'm black, my likelihood of selling this house is going to go down drastically. White people don't have to think about that. You buy a photo frame, and the pictures that come in it most likely are going to be white families. They're the majority culture. So there's just this consistent, like, okay, I need to plan my steps out. We have to think through a lot more because the problem is at our doorstep. It's not at white people's doorstep, so they don't have to think about it. And that leads to like, well, what do you mean race relations need repair? This hasn't even been on their radar. They're not even thinking about it. So I would say that's why they maybe are not as vocal, or they don't have to worry about the things that we do.